For decades, really, Disney was kind of the gold standard, wasn't it, for telling stories about human connection?
Absolutely. Romance, whimsy.
Yeah, exactly. If you wanted a love story, whether it was this epic thing or just something quiet,
You went to Disney.
you went to the mouse. And love, often that really transformative, self-sacrificial kind of love, it was the driving force, the whole plot.
It really was. It wasn't just like window dressing. It was the emotional engine.
Yeah.
You had characters taking these huge risks, life-altering, sometimes identity-shattering risks.
It's because they loved so.
Right. And that deep emotional investment, that's what made the stakes feel so real for us, for the audience.
Even with, talking teacups or magic carpets.
Exactly, even in fantasy setting.
But, okay, based on the source material we've been looking at today, the argument is that things have, definitely changed.
Yeah, the core argument is that somewhere along the line, Disney developed a pretty significant romance problem.
A romance problem? Wow.
Yeah, and that's been a conscious shift, moving the focus away from that sacrificial love, that vulnerability.
And towards what?
Adventure. Towards adventure, yeah. Or maybe external political power, more solitary journey.
So our mission today really is to unpack the specific claims being made by this source. We want to analyze why this shift might have happened.
Exactly. Delving into the sort of philosophical, maybe even ideological reasons behind it.
And also look at what the analysis says was law. What narrative power disappeared when Disney maybe retired core element.
And it's really important, I think, to frame this the right way.
Okay.
This isn't just like angry bashing. The source material comes from a place of real deep affection for the company.
Yeah.
Almost like mourning something lost.
Yeah, I got that sense too. It acknowledges that, okay, maybe some fans are dissatisfied now, but the baseline love for Disney is still there.
Right. It's the argument of fans who feel like something foundational to the storytelling they loved has been, consciously put aside.
Okay, so let's dive in. If we want to understand this modern critique, this idea that Disney has kind of broken its ability to tell a love story,
Then we first need to get really clear on what the source material argues classic Disney romance actually was. What did it look like? What did it do in the story?
Right. So the source defines a successful Disney romance, not just by, the happily ever after.
No, it's more about the emotional complexity, the journey, and the function it served in the narrative.
Its function, what do you mean?
Well, it wasn't just two good-looking characters meeting. It was an active force, something that fundamentally changed the main character's path, their whole trajectory.
Okay, I see. So love itself was the catalyst.
Exactly. That's what the source points out as fascinating. These classic stories were often centered on how love changes people, makes them act in ways they normally wouldn't.
Like making huge sacrifices.
Huge sacrifice. Think about Ariel giving up her voice, Belle trading her freedom for her father's.
Wow.
Love wasn't treated as just some quaint distraction on the side. It was framed as a fantastical adventure, all on its own.
An adventure, I like that.
Yeah.
And this idea, the source says, that this kind of love was something characters would fight for no matter how...
Right. No matter the heartbreak or the consequences, it was meant to open the characters' eyes, expand their world in a way they hadn't seen before.
And the music, the source brings up the music as a key element here.
Oh, absolutely. The music sold this expansion brilliantly. Think about those iconic songs. A Whole New World, Tale as Old as Time.
Part of Your World.
Exactly. They weren't just catchy tunes playing in the background.
No, they were emotional, really specific to the characters, showing them experiencing something totally new, that connection.
Let's take A Whole New World. The source argues it's not really about Aladdin showing Jasmine cool sights.
It's more than that.
It's about their shared realization, right? That the world is bigger, brighter, more possible when they're experiencing it together.
Okay, so the magic carpet ride is like a metaphor.
Yeah, a metaphor for the internal journey they're starting together. That shared joy of first love.
And part of your world, how does that fit?
Well, the source reminds us, Ariel already wanted to be human, right? She was curious. But meeting Eric, that amplified the desire. It gave her a specific, tangible reason to make that ultimate sacrifice of her voice.
Ah, so the romance gave her existing desire more weight, higher stakes.
Immeasurably higher stakes. It infused the adventure with immediate personal meaning.
But it wasn't only about romantic love, was it? The source clarifies that.
No, absolutely not. And that's a crucial point. Familial love played the exact same transformative, self-sacrificial role.
Like Belle, you mentioned her earlier, sacrificing her freedom for her father.
Right, or Mulan, stepping into her aging father's place in the army. I mean, talk about massive life-altering risks.
Driven purely by love for family.
Exactly. And Mulan is actually a brilliant example the source uses for another point.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
How even when romance was more understated, maybe a secondary element, it still served a really powerful subplot role.
Okay, like with Mulan and Shang.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Their relationship, which really only blossoms after the war, it functions to cement his deep respect for her, their shared trust.
It solidifies their bond beyond just comrades in arms.
Yeah, it demonstrates the unique strength of their connection, built on mutual respect and experience.
This all builds towards a really key case study the source identifies, the sort of last great example before this supposed shift.
Right, Tangled.
Which came out, a decade and a half ago now?
Around then, yeah. And the source basically holds it up as the benchmark, the last truly successful original Disney romance.
Okay, let's unpack that. Why Tangled? What made Rapunzel and Eugene's relationship stand out, according to this account?
Well, it really boils down to organic development. It wasn't predestined, like some passive fairy tale ending.
Right. Neither of them was actually looking for romance.
Not at all. Eugene wanted treasure, Rapunzel wanted freedom, lanterns, But the relationship, the source says, it happened organically through shared experiences and tragedy. It grew out of their adventure together.
And that mutual growth aspect, the source really highlights that.
Critically important. Eugene starts off as this cynical, self-serving thief, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
But he ends up teaching Rapunzel how to be shrewd and savvy, how to navigate the complexities and dangers of the outside world she wanted so badly.
And she teaches him
how to trust, how to believe in people. She basically restores his faith, his morality. They fundamentally changed each other.
They saved each other in different ways.
Exactly. And this leads to the film's emotional peak, the real power, according to the source, of the cost and reward of love.
When she uses her hair to save him.
And loses it. She loses her magic healing power, her iconic hair, her literal, measurable, physical superpower. She's sacrificed.
And the argument is that loss didn't matter at all.
To Rapunzel or to the audience, yeah. Because she had found true love, which the film clearly positions as being far better than any magical ability.
Wow. That willingness to sacrifice actual power for emotional connection, that's the heart of it.
That's the source argues, yes. That human connection is positioned as the ultimate prize, worth more than magic.
So that's the high bar then. Mutual vulnerability, organic growth, sacrifice trumping power.
That's the definition we're working with. And now we use that as a kind of springboard to look at, what the source says is happening now.
Okay, so we've established that rich baseline, classic Disney romance, powerful stuff. Now the source pivots pretty sharply, right? To look at where modern Disney storytelling is different.
Very sharply. The analysis basically contends that the focus has shifted entirely away from romance.
Entirely. That sounds quite extreme.
Well, entirely away from that kind of romance. Towards these narratives dominated by adventure, or maybe purely familial love.
And again, we should stress, the source isn't saying those other themes are bad in themselves.
No, not at all. The critique is specifically about the conscious, deliberate rejection of the romantic theme.
Which has led to what? What's the criticism of modern?
Pretty harsh criticism, actually. Words like boring, bland, uninteresting, and maybe the most damning, sterile.
Sterile, out. There's this image, the source, quite memorable.
Oh, the one about the actors. Yeah. Describing the emotional connection is so weak that the actors look like it hurts to look at each other, much less kiss.
Yeah. And the source clarifies that's not really a knock on the act selves.
No, it's a critique of the writing.
Yeah.
The fundamental lack of chemistry written into the scripts, presumably because that emotional connection just isn't the priority.
And this rejection, it goes beyond just like an implied lack of focus.
Oh, yeah. It becomes pretty explicit, especially when the analysis looks at the commentary around some of the upcoming live-action remakes, specifically the new Snow White.
Ah, right. This caused quite a stir. This is where the narrative...
Exactly. It's made explicit. The message that got circulated widely from people involved with the production
was that the new Snow White is not going to be saved by the prince.
And she's not going to be dreaming about true love. It's a deliberate upfront statement that central emotional drive retired.
So what is she dreaming about, according to this new...
Well, the analysis notes, based on reports, she's dreaming about becoming a leader, fulfilling a potential her late father apparently saw in her.
Right, that she could lead if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
So the pursuit of political power, of leadership potential, is actively stepping in to replace the aspiration for romantic fulfillment.
This is where I thought the source made a really interesting move, using the original Snow White cartoon to argue that maybe the modern writers are misunderstanding something fundamental.
Yes, misunderstanding the perseverance that was actually baked into that classic structure.
How so?
Well, the argument is the original Snow White was actually a model of virtue and perseverance. He wasn't passive.
Okay, break that down.
Think about it. She endures years of suffering under the evil queen. Then she has to flee for her life. She ends up working incredibly hard, cooking, cleaning for 7 messy dwarves.
Who became like her family, hiding her.
Exactly. And through all that hardship, she maintains her kindness, her grace and aplomb, as the source puts it, she survives.
That's actually a powerful reframing. But isn't there a risk here? Is the source maybe romanticizing the past a bit? Were those old films really that nuanced?
That's a fair question. I think the analysis would contend the nuance lies in the function of the romance within that structure.
Okay.
The source argues the prince is actually a tiny part of the original movie. He shows up at the start, sings a song, then vanishes until the very end.
To deliver the kiss, break the spell.
Right. So in that reading, true love wasn't the central goal of her entire life. It was positioned as her reward.
Her reward for what?
For having persevered through all that suffering, for maintaining her goodness and grace despite everything. It's like moral and emotional validation earned through struggle.
Ah, okay. So, in the classic structure, struggle, virtue, then redemption, true love as an earned.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
Whereas the modern interpretation, according to this analysis, seems to view any reliance on a man for rescue or fulfillment as inherently weak.
An unacceptable weakness that has to be rejected.
And replaced immediately with a story about acquiring power, usually political or physical.
Which sets up the source's core ideological critique, doesn't it, about why this shift is happening?
Exactly. Now we move beyond just observing what changed and get into the source's analysis of why, the philosophical, the ideological drive.
And the core tension seems to be around power versus vulnerability.
That's right. Critique number one, the source lays out. Modern writers, allegedly, just fundamentally misunderstand sacrifice and vulnerability within a relationship.
They don't get the push and pull and sacrifice that romance needs to actually work to allow for growth.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
And it stems, the source argues, from viewing all human interaction through this kind of cynical lens of power dynamics.
So if everything is about power,
then any idea of changing yourself for someone else, or truly wanting the best for them, even if it means giving up some of your own independence or perceived power, that's seen as the ultimate weakness.
it becomes unacceptable, even allowing someone else to care for you or just relying on each other.
It gets filtered through this idea of a power imbalance that must be rejected. The analysis calls it filtering romance through a strange lens of power.
Okay, so if vulnerability equals weakness,
Then the whole structure of classic romance, which often starts with someone vulnerable, finding strength through connection that becomes ideologically problematic.
right, the priority shifts. It's not about finding strength with someone anymore. It's about demonstrating strength alone.
Which leads straight into the second major critique, and maybe the most pervasive one the source identifies.
Which is?
This alleged belief among modern writers that romance itself is inherently oppressive, that it actively holds women back from reaching their full potential.
And how is that full potential usually defined in these newer according?
Almost universally, the source argues, as gaining political power or physical power, external measurable power.
And the prime example used here is the Mulan 2020 live action.
Yes, a very detailed breakdown. The original animated Mulan was about, ingenuity, love of family, saving China, eventually finding acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
The 2020 version, though, is critiqued for shifting the entire focus onto Mulan discovering her own innate power, her ki,
And using it.
to basically show the patriarchy that women do it better. The source argues the goal shifted from saving the country through teamwork and cleverness to proving individual superiority.
And what about the love interest in that version? The source had some pretty strong words.
Brutal is a good word. Described as functionally irrelevant, a fawning fanboy,
Ouch.
whose only purpose is to hype Mulan up, sing her praises, or just receive orders from her. His own contribution is seen as negligible.
So the acceptable romance becomes one where the woman is totally in charge.
That's the interpretation, marked by worshipful reverence from the man, and maybe only vague abstract interest from the woman. Any equal sharing of power or status is avoided because it supposedly limits the woman's autonomy.
And the source ties this to the absence of General Shang from the original animated movie. That's seen as significant evidence.
Very significant, according to the analysis. Why leave out Shang, the strong, capable male leader she eventually partners with?
What's the source's answer?
The contention is that a powerful, capable male leader like Shang, the modern framework, could only exist to show how problematic he is and how a woman needs to take over.
Wow, so removing him entirely.
And replacing him with a character whose main function is just admiration. It eliminates the possibility of a powerful equal partner. It ensures all the power, all the spotlight stays solely on Mulan.
That is a very strong claim, that these writing choices are driven by a specific agenda focused on female dominance over narrative complexity or part.
That is precisely what the source argues, yes. And this philosophy apparently extends into critique number 3.
Okay, what's that?
an alleged attempt at actual economic and political reordering within the narrative structure itself. It's not just emotional dominance, it's about visible status.
Right. This is where the source brings up some of the more controversial claims, particularly around the plan Snow White. We need to be really clear here.
Absolutely. We have to emphasize this is the direct interpretation presented in the source material we analyze. It's based on circulating reports, interviews, and rumors.
Okay, so the source material discusses this planned Snow White.
And alleges, based on those reports, a narrative folk where the princess is trying to bring communism back to her kingdom, implying a very strong political angle.
Okay. And also something about the prince's status.
Yes, the source asserts, again, based on reports, that the prince's status is deliberately lowered. He's placed in a lower economic stand.
So that Snow White, the princess, can what?
So she can elevate him from his poverty by virtue of her own superior wealth and status.
So the analysis sees this as a deliberate move to ensure the female protagonist holds the power advantage, political economic, right from the start.
That's the interpretation presented. And the source argues the overall function for male characters in these newer narratives becomes, well, existing on the fringes.
Just support roles, people who need elevating or instructing.
Essentially, yes. They mustn't possess inherent power or status that could challenge the female lead's position or restrict her autonomy. Any connection has to be on her terms, reinforcing her superiority.
It sounds like if the main goal is always power, leadership, prowess, then romance, which requires vulnerability and interdependence, comes
a hindrance, an unnecessary complication, an afterthought that potentially dilutes the core message of individual autonomous power.
Which leads to the final critique from the source about how Hollywood sees romance itself.
Right. The perceived irrelevance of it all. This notion, supposedly held by executives and writers, that romance is just a product of a bygone era.
That it's no longer relevant to modern audiences.
Exactly. Audiences today only want complex, action-packed, female-led blockbusters, and that characters need to consciously show we've moved past the need for romance to appeal to them.
But the source pushes back hard on that, doesn't it?
Vigorously. Argues it's based on a myth of the modern audience, a myth that keeps getting disproven when you look at the huge success of other media, other studios that fully embrace romance.
So why would that myth persist, according?
Well, the suggestion is perhaps it persists because it aligns neatly with that ideological goal, producing autonomous, powerful figures who don't need anyone else. It conveniently sidelines the whole messy, complicated business of mutual reliance and romance.
Okay, so if the source says the decision makers might believe romance is irrelevant, how does it counter that? By showing romance still work even today.
Exactly. By highlighting how romance, done right, especially as a strong subplot, actually deepens the narrative. It complements the main journey, and it absolutely still resonates with audience.
This distinction is important then. It doesn't always have to be the main plot.
Crucial distinction. The source stresses, even back in the supposed golden age, romance wasn't always front and center. Think about classics like, Mulan again.
Right. Her main goal wasn't finding Shang.
Or Aladdin. His main goal was freedom, changing his state. Or The Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, Tiana's dream was the restaurant.
In all those, the adventure or the personal goal was the main story. But the romance, it was a powerful, you could argue necessary, subplot. It enhanced the characters' journeys without overshadowing.
Let's dig into The Princess and the Frog. The source holds that up as a kind of perfect modern model, right, for how to do this well.
It really does. Tiana is highlighted as maybe one of the most relevant, relatable princess. Working class, super ambitious, driven entirely by her dream.
Her identity is her work ethic, her ambition.
Totally. And Prince Naveen, he's definitely a secondary character in her story. Initially, he's kind of irresponsible, maybe arrogant, but he quickly proves he compliments Tiana. He doesn't restrict her. The source notes he lacks practical skills outside of music, and he admits it. But he's not shamed for it by Tiana.
Right. Instead, once they're, frogs.
And they have to rely on each other. Naveen rolls up his sleeves and gets to work in any way that he can. He tries to meet her where she is.
They work together. He learns discipline from her.
And she learns from him how to relax a bit, enjoy life, see beyond just the work. It's mutual.
And that mutual contribution, working towards a shared goal without judging where the other started, that defines a healthy, relevant relationship.
One that actively supports the ambitious heroine. Yeah, it doesn't distract from her restaurant dream. Arguably, it makes achieving it even sweeter because now it's shared.
So the clear point here is just relegating romance to an afterthought or treating it like it's beneath serious narrative attention, that does a disservice to loyal fans.
Fans who still crave that depth of connection, yeah. And if the narrative shift is driven by this idea that the audience has moved on, well, the success of other content just proves that idea wrong.
Which brings us to the external proof, examples from outside Disney that the source points to.
Right. stories from other studios, other media that successfully weave powerful romantic subplots into action-heavy narrative. The source specifically mentions an animated series. Characters sometimes called the K-pop demon hunt, often referred to as Rumi and Gino.
Okay, I think I know the one. High-stakes action, right? Demons fighting.
Exactly. The main plot is definitely high-octane fantasy action. But the romantic subplot between the two main characters, Rumi and Gino, who are both incredibly powerful fighters.
That subplot.
According to the source, yeah. Incredibly complex, deeply woven into their motivations. Their love and commitment to each other is what drives them.
And how does it play out?
Well, the analysis highlights that their bond leads both characters to have an equal role in the story's conclusion. They fight side by side, relying on each other to defeat the big bad gimmick.
So their connection is their strength.
It's the driving force behind their willingness to sacrifice everything. They share the victory together, even though the ending itself is actually quite bittersweet, tragic in some ways.
But the romance still provides the emotional payoff.
Absolutely. That enduring strength of their connection, the idea of fighting together for each other, that resonated deeply with a massive global audience.
And that, the source, is the kind of narrative resonance, that emotional weight
that Disney is currently, perhaps consciously, shedding in favor of stories focused purely on singular autonomous power. #tag outro. So just to kind of wrap up the core argument of this source material for you listening, romance isn't obsolete. It's not irrelevant. It's definitely not inherently restricted.
In fact, the argument is it's the foundation for so many of the most successful, most beloved stories. Disney itself built its legacy.
Right. And consciously rejecting it or minimizing it may be driven by these philosophical reinterpretations of power versus vulnerability. Well, the source argues it just results in narrative flat.
What the source bluntly called slop, that is translated into flop.
Pretty direct language, yeah.
So what's the hope expressed here?
The hope really is that maybe Disney will eventually look at the successes happening elsewhere, other studios still embracing romance, and compare it to the, let's say, lukewarm reception some of their own recent projects have received.
And realize they need to course correct.
Yeah, find a way to bring back that sense of mutual sacrifice, that vulnerability, that powerful interdependence into their storytelling.
The key takeaway isn't that every story needs a wedding.
Not at all. But it's that when the pursuit of political power or leadership or just being completely autonomous, when that becomes the ultimate, maybe the only acceptable fulfillment for a protagonist.
Then what happens to things like sacrifice, vulnerability, deep mutual reliance?
They get squeezed out. There's just no narrative space left for them on the story map.
Which really leaves an important question for you, the listener, to think about as you watch things, consume stories.
Yeah.
If power and leadership are positioned as the ultimate goal, what narrative function is left for sacrifice, for vulnerability, for that messy but profound interdependence in modern storytelling? What we actually gain when the complexity of vulnerability gets traded for just unwavering solo autonomy?
That is definitely something worth thinking about.